And I'll check to see what the recording is like. Can you hear us now, Justin? Yeah, cool. All right. Well, welcome to the February 13th circle for the Heartwork and Philosophy Guild. And as is our habit, there are a few things that we do at the beginning, and one of them is land acknowledgement. And I'm asking for a volunteer or someone who would do the land acknowledgement.
And I am always happy to. And um, I am happy to do it. And I am modeling. And I don't know why people think this is scary because it's really quite simple. But, uh, and I always start with the words of Norm Leach, which is we start by acknowledging the land because the land was here before we were, and the land will continue on long after we are gone. And everything that we know and experience and need, everything that keeps us alive and thriving comes from the land and returns to the land. And we start our meetings that way as a reminder, basically to keep things in context and to understand our true place in the world. And so in doing that and acknowledging the land, we are leaning into deep wisdom and deep tradition that has been discovered and maintained by indigenous cultures around the world for time immemorial. And in acknowledging that, we also acknowledge a debt of gratitude and an obligation that comes with that gratitude to learn to be in right relations with all of our relations, human and more than human. And so I, in particular, will nod to the Wasanic, who are the people who have tended this land for time immemorial, and their Coast Salish cousins and who are nearby. But to all of the stewards of the land throughout time and currently. Um, so with that, I invite us to all take a moment just to literally ground yourself. So just take a moment to get comfortable in the seat where you are. You might want to close your eyes if that feels okay. And just become aware of your breath. You've been breathing all along, and now we're just bringing our attention to it. The rise as you breathe in, oxygen meeting bloodstream, and the relaxation as you exhale, carbon dioxide being released. And this is a constant reminder of our reciprocal relationship to the environment. We are kept alive by our green relatives, and in turn, our exhale becomes their inhale. And so, with that in mind, take one more deep, refreshing breath in, bringing in fresh energy. And on the exhale, just let go of anything that stands between you and being present today. And with that, on your own time, find your way back to the circle. Back to you, Rowan.
Thank you, Ben. Um, and as our check-in, um, in part as a way of honoring the this new cycle for the Heartwork and Philosophy Guild in a short phrase, preferably in haiku form. What attracts you to this guild, and what do you hope to get from this guild in the coming year? And the circle, as I see it, is Ben, me, Justin, and then April. So
I,
over to you, Ben.
I anticipated hanging. Let me do it. All right. Um, So what is it that attract? I can't do haiku on ad hoc haiku, but what is it that
Yeah, it's
hmm?
optional.
Okay. I can't even remember. It's 575. Anyhow, what is it that draws me to this guild? The agreements and the oral tradition of the agreements. So, thinking about what it takes to build deeper relationships. Over to you, Roland.
For me, a big part of the Lifeboat Academy is that we are engaged in um, the how and not the what. And that's not a haiku, by the way. And I think, and so Heartwork and Philosophy is sort of the heartwood of the tree that is the Lifeboat Academy. The basis, the core, the ground that everything else gets built up on. So over to Justin.
Justin and crew.
Yes, we're a unit.
Awesome.
Um, what attracted me to the Heartwork and Philosophy Guild was the description on the mural board, but I can't remember what it was at this point. And that, yeah, I kind of try not to overwhelm my schedule so I can give myself to things fully when I see that it's like aligned. It's like the path with a heart kind of thing. And so, yeah, I'm just, I want to be more involved with what the Lifeboat Academy is doing. Um, so, yeah, I'm here and I'm excited and nervous to kind of get up to speed and get into a flow with all you folks. So, yeah. And it was a good description, even though I can't remember it. And I'll pass to April.
And do you want to give your partner a chance too? Or, and I apologize that I forget her name. I,
Hi. I'm Angie. I
Angie.
um I feel like I've taken on more of the child care aspect of this dynamic. So I'm not fully aware of what's going on in this meeting. I'm just here to take baby when I need to and unmute when I need to. But I really believe in what you guys are doing, and I'm fully excited to and grateful to be here. So thank you.
Over to you, April. Oh, I can't hear you. You're not muted, but I can't hear you. Can anyone else hear her? All right. Yeah, I think it's on your end.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yay.
My computer thought I was on headphones, although I can clearly see I'm not. Um, what attracted me to this guild was that there was heart in the name of it, and I mean, as part of the larger group of guilds, I was really chuffed to have heart and heart work, which to me implies emotional intelligence and connection and some really fundamental lifeblood stuff that was seen as important enough to be a guild on its own. And I approve of what the guild is supposed to be doing. And when I'm at my best, I actually find myself achieving some of what the guild is supposed to be doing. Because one of the other things is also being convivial and celebratory, and also kind of being a thermostat for how the other guilds are doing with the heart piece and the agreements and some of the other things that are fundamental. And back to Ben.
I guess back to Roland.
I was muted. All right. Well, and I think I'm just going to quickly go over what the agreements are, as seems like an appropriate thing to do at the launch of a new cycle. And the agreements are that we're all in this together. So we encourage the kind of language when we're talking in this guild of what the we and not the you, as in what we can do or what we're working on, as opposed to what you can do or what you can work on. That we always have choice, and it's sort of acknowledging that choice is always there, and acknowledging that choices have consequences, and trying to lead with curiosity, kindness, patience, compassion, and gentleness. So that helps to listen to both ourselves and to other people with understanding or for understanding. And speaking from the heart, which is something that's always in the present. So it's what's true for you right now, because we're always getting new information and things change. And that's relating to the also and, not the either or. That there's always multiple influences on things, and that they are very, very rarely binaries, if ever. To keep it simple, to enjoy and to find the humor, and more brass tacks, housekeeping type stuff. The session is recorded and we post to YouTube. So if there are any concerns, we have a privacy statement, and we're happy and able to make any arrangements, remove anything that you'd like to have removed, or etc. So that's really quickly going through the agreements. There are agreements that are sort of Lifeboat Academy agreements. But for this session, do you have anything that you'd like to add, or any questions or concerns? And we'll relaunch the circle with Ben.
Yeah, the only thing I add is they're always when we present them, they're proposed. And if you have a concern or a problem with any of them, then please bring them up and we'll talk it through. And likewise, like Roland said, if you have anything that you need to add to feel like you can be present. And I don't have anything to add, and I think it's great to have a touchstone to come back to. So Roland, over to you.
I'm going to reference the oral tradition. We've got all of these agreements written down, and that's to help us with our background, where we come from. But there's always the understanding that the agreements are fluid and can and do change as sort of whatever existing conditions shift and change. So it's based in what's happening now, what's real now, and yeah, and is a fluid thing. Over to April. Justin, if you have anything that you'd like to add or any questions.
Is it like what I would add to the agreements, or questions about the agreements?
Yes.
Both. It's both.
No questions right now. I do like Amir can like testify to this because we spent the season at Abundance, but I do like crave being in circles that acknowledge just the impact of like our material world around us. Like in my Zoom screen, like I'm in a room in a house like filled with things, and we care about the land and we want to protect the land. Um, and at the same time, there's this like weird thing where we depend on all that destruction like every day in order to go about our lives. So yeah, like I do crave like an acknowledgement of that. Like we're trying to protect the places we're in, and at the same time dependent on industries that are, um, kind of destroying other places and other peoples and other cultures. And uh, yeah, like that's always like in the forefront for me, and I feel a lot of grief about it. And yeah, I guess it's a big ask to acknowledge it, but that's kind of one thing. Um, I'm passing to April.
April.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add, and I pass to Ben, I think, although I'm somewhat confused by the circle for some reason today.
It, I think the confusion of the circle is just because I'm not leading the meeting, but I t ended up at the front of the circle. So, but I will take this pass, or I will take this round because I wanted to say uh, ditto on acknowledging that reality, and I've added it to the agreements here, and actually, thank you for bringing it up. It's one of the things I go on and on about the what I call the fair share footprint, and it always feels like the hardest piece to get people to grok. Um, you know, like we are not neutral innocents here. You know, we have we have some obligations. We've got some work to do in terms of cleaning up our own acts. So yeah, no, that thanks for that addition. I guess over to you, Roland, or back to you.
Yeah, I'd like to propose that we continue, do one more round with the circle to, I think, because I would like to propose that this is a valuable addition to the agreements as we have them now. I think Vanessa, oh shoot,
Andriotti.
Vanessa Andriotti has a really lovely way of talking about this, and I think it was in her introduction that she also did this acknowledgement, uh, and I fully approve of sort of acknowledging that we 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 each take up space on this planet, and that it what one of the things that we're trying to do at the Lifeboat Academy is to learn how to take up space so that we minimize the harm to others. So yeah, so I'm in complete agreement, and I'll pass to you, Justin, if there's anything that you want to add. Otherwise, you can pass to April for any input that she might have to add this to the agreements.
Uh, I'm not sure I have anything to add right now, so I could pass to April.
For me, it would be helpful if we can add fair share footprint somewhere there as kind of the what we've come to as a way to deal with this contradiction. Thank you.
Back to you, Roland. I always feel like the in the behind the news desk, and now sports.
And I'm jumping from page to page, and anyway, technology, etc. Um, uh, well, and So I would propose that we actually we don't at every meeting we don't always go through the purpose of the uh, the guild, but I feel like again with this sort of launching of a new cycle that it'd be worthwhile to go through it. So if you would go to the primary functions and
Oh,
April, I'm acknowledging that you are recovering from a bad cold, and so I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to do stuff, and you can just sit back and join in whenever you feel like it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the primary function, and uh, I'll try to remember when we post the video to include the Google Doc um, that says the same thing, I
driver
suppose,
statement.
in more detail. The driver statement, thank you. But essentially, the guild acts as the emotional heart of the Lifeboat Academy, um, and and this is where I feel like there we talk about the how, and it's the how we work together, but it's also how we learn to understand things.
Yeah.
So it's the how to learn how to learn. So, and I've forgotten the name of the guy who said it first, but learning to unlearn to relearn.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the another function for the this guild is to be keeper of the agreements. So to keep it alive for the Lifeboat Academy as a whole, so for the other guilds as well as for our own, um, with the understanding that everything is interrelated and the guilds are interrelated. Um, And I'm going to read the last one because it's the content that happens from the process and the practices that support the content being wholesome and healthy as possible. Uh, so around to see if there's any questions or any comments, any additions that anyone would like to make to that. And I will pass to I'll pass to Ben.
Okay. Um, no, I like this, and I feel like, we're just coming off of the charrette, and so it feels more anchored in. And I think this year really coming more firmly to, it's about the agreements and how do we work with each other. It's about the how. Um, so yeah, I think that's I feel like I'm getting it at the bone level, not just at the head level. So over to you, Roland.
Yeah, uh, and this is one of the fascinating things in developing the guilds. The overlaps are actually more of a blending, of a shading between the different parts that make up the Lifeboat Academy, and because there's Heartwork stuff that is very closely associated with the curiosity or the education. Is it learning and
Research and learning.
research and learning guild, which is a new name, and I'm still trying to anchor it in. Uh, so there's there are often places where it's not always clear which guild takes care of what, but the reason why we have things as guilds is so that we can spread out the work more evenly and focus differently. Uh, yeah, so that's what I would, a clarification that I feel I want to put forward. So over to Justin.
Just reading over the driver's statement again, and I agree, and no questions at this time, so I'll pass to April.
And I agree, and no questions either. And I pass to probably Ben, but maybe Roland.
I'm thinking roll on.
Okay, okay, Ben, let's just switch places.
Okay.
All right. I think that'll be easier. Uh, I have a bit of a phobia of being the front man, so I always throw my partner in front. So the main responsibilities for the guild, grosso modo, is we're the keeper of the agreements. The guild ensures that the agreements are integrated into all the guilds and all of the lifeboat activities. Um, we host the Connect the Dots Club. The Connect the Dots Club is facilitated by members of various guilds, but this is where it lives. And the Connect the Dots Plus the club is just a place to create spaces to build and deepen internal relationships within the Lifeboat Academy. Um, we also have morning circles for anyone who is actually on the farm. And a big part of the morning circles is going through, coming up with what the agreements are for the day, how we want to show up during the day. And we've translated that into the agreement circles, which we're having online every other week. And so it's just talking about agreements about how we want to be together overall. And one of the responsibilities is when there are new guild members to onboard them. And I think I can quickly say here that there will be a general onboarding session that'll be offered at some point in the next couple of weeks. So this is just general onboarding for the Lifeboat Academy Guild system. And I think that's all I have in terms of main responsibilities. Just around for any questions or comments. Ben?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. So over to Justin.
Yeah, seems straightforward to me as well. No questions. To April.
Thank you. I'm fine with that, and on to Roland.
The system works.
So then next is just going over what we left off at the end of the last cycle. So the last meeting that we had, which was right after the charrette, and the action items. So we are midway into emergence. That sounds very enlightened. And that's we have potential projects that to launch, I think, and so we were starting to talk about what that could look like and how we could accomplish them. Take a look at these notes. Note taker, I don't know what the next one means. Oh,
it's the notes from we started gathering at our last meeting. We started gathering considerations, and that was learning from Connect the Dots Club, and the purpose behind it was one of our tasks that we've taken on is to develop a checklist that the other guilds can use to help around engagement and deepening connections. So we were going to try to lean into what did we learn over the last year that we could condense into something like a checklist that we could share with the other guilds. So that's what it meant by looking at the notes. And this is what I have on the screen now. This is actually from our proposal, that we'll look at promising practices. We'll also identify negative lessons, things not to do, try to come up with a checklist, and then we'll use that checklist and kind of talk to everybody else in the guilds for, does this make sense? What would you change? And then, because our big thing is to formulate what a retreat on site would look like. But we thought it made sense for us to gather our lessons and then use that also as sort of a foundation for how do we want the retreat to work. So, and then, right, and then we started gathering considerations, and we looked at what we did with Connect the Dots. So a lot of this is just how we got to the Connect the Dots Club. We sort of started with a book club idea, but then we identified what some of the limitations with that are. In particular, I think the limitation is that they tend to be kind of superficial or not applied. So you talk big ideas, but then what? And so we started to think about how we could still talk about those interesting ideas, but sort of move it into something more like a practice. And also, I think we also recognized that was the whole idea with mapping the territories. There's a lot of territory to cover. So it isn't just identifying a long list, but actually how do things relate to each other? What are the big picture things that we're talking about? And then we started to get into the actual, like, what we learned about it, that it was a way of kind of meeting people where they are. It was a way of figuring out where everyone was coming from, and understanding where people's wisdoms come from, what people know and don't know. I think these got duplicated. Yeah. And then we were talking about, well, and connecting the relationships, not just a dot, but a network. And just scrolling, I think that's it. And this is where I think that was actually Roland saying my left and right brain aren't communicating well. And that's when we realized we were probably at the end of our productivity, and we segued and thought, well, let's come back to this at the next meeting. So I am happy to scroll up and down if anyone wants to look at anything in particular. And back to you, Roland.
I was in fact wondering about the onboarding for Justin, if he's agreeable to having being part of the Asana, so that you'd have access to all of these notes and can look at them at your leisure. So if we can add you to, I don't know if you have Asana already, but you can think about whether or not you'd want to have another app.
This is also, it's something that we go over in onboarding. Yeah. How we use Asana, and it's all optional. So there's no requirement, and we try to make sure that the information is always available, whether you use Asana or not.
Okay, yeah. I will think about that, but for the moment, it seems like a good idea, and it'd be really helpful to have access to the notes.
And I'm going to ask that my two in-house facilitators, if we were to continue doing a gathering considerations for this, how would we do that without starting all over again?
I think I would I would start it with let's do one round. Where do you think we are now? And what seems like the next logical step. So, and I think that would give each for Justin, it would give him an opportunity to hear kind of our summary statements. And for the rest of us, it would also give us an opportunity just to kind of feel into it.
And I forgot to mention at the very beginning that one of the basic elements of circle is that you can also always just pass. If you have nothing to say, you can just say pass. So 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 this is another element on the agenda, and what we have left over. Ben shared the notes, and we posted the last meeting video to YouTube, and thinking about dynamic tensions and pairs. Does that relate to the building the checklist?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was sort of recognizing that a lot of these things are tensions. So it's not about a fixed point, but it's getting the balance right between, I think it came up around the idea of the coffee shop,
Yep.
maybe, but it was
Yep.
this idea that, it can be too structured and it can be too loose, so yeah, when we're thinking about the checklist, how do we kind of help people? Maybe it's the less a checklist and more a guardrails and center lines.
Mhm.
What feels like the sweet spot and what feel like some of those you're starting to get into dangerous water if it's mixing metaphors, but there you have it. April, over to you for any additions.
Checklists and dangerous waters. I'm starting to feel like I'm on a kayak tour here somehow. Um, yeah, I like the ideas for the rounds, and there's just a couple of things that are coming to me about the process and about like thinking about our last conversation that we had and kind of why we got to where we got to. So that's what I have to say on to Roland.
And in terms of the agenda priorities, I think this is we're typing over what we had for the last meeting. Do we still have work to do in terms of reviewing the driver statement?
No.
No. So I'd suggest we one of the things that one of our projects for this cycle is the retreat. So would it make sense to add that to the agenda?
Only if we think we're going to get to it today.
Okay.
Is it, so that's the question is that on the agenda for today or do we, I mean, pretty much I think we'll take our time just figuring out what lessons learned look like.
Uh-huh. Okay, so then the question then is, do we want to finish the lessons learned as a priority over starting to talk about the retreat? So over to Ben.
Yes. Well, and especially because we talked about using that checklist as the foundation for the retreat, so we can't do one until the other, or we could, but I think it logically it just makes sense that way. So at least that's my thought. Over to you, Justin.
I apologize for being all around the screen, but baby's just on the potty right now because we're doing elimination communication. But yeah, I'm following, and I'll pass for now to April.
Okay, yeah, I think that we only have time for uh, to continue our conversation, and we might be like just on the cusp of jumping into our learnings from our consideration. So I think that's what I prefer to do. I also have to go at about 10 after 3. So over to Roland.
Okay. So is it jumping back into the the checklist considerations notes?
So,
Okay, so let's go there.
oh, you mean going back to that? Okay.
Yeah, it did like it's building on that,
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
And have we started to put notes in I see the three subtasks. Are there any notes in there
I
yet?
don't believe so.
No, okay.
I'll double check, but I don't think so.
So then what would make sense for that? Because we already have some considerations. Do we want to just see if there's any other considerations we want to add to the list we already have, or do we want to start going through them to see which ones track with these three different categories?
I
I need help facilitating this. I'm not
okay.
quite sure where we're going.
Okay. What I was suggesting is that we start fresh. Basically, that we don't try to go back into the weeds of the notes, but we actually rely on what our brains have retained and brought forward. And that will help us summarize. Because a lot of this is the way I work as a facilitator is I think forgetfulness is just as important as remembering. And so, letting go of some of the details helps to pull you back to kind of the core stuff. So if we don't work too hard at going back into the notes, but we actually just say what seem to be the most important things that we want to pull forward from those discussions, that'll give us a summarized place to start. So that's what I was proposing. And I see April's nodding. So I think there's April, over to you for
Yeah,
anything to elaborate.
I what you said, Ben. Um, yeah, and I believe the process will happen. Over to Roland.
Okie dokie, let's do it.
Oh, so that's over to me? Or do you want to start, Ron?
Uh, yeah, go ahead. You start.
Okay. Um, I thought about this earlier today, and I was thinking about one thing that I think is really important is the regularity.
Yeah,
Um, and and it's sort of the steady drumbeat. One of the realities is people are always coming and going, and having that kind of rhythmic
yeah,
period to it, even if people can't be there the whole time, it starts to take on its own kind of um, energy, and it allows people to sort of ease in and out as they want to. So, and I guess, and for Justin, we do something we call gathering consideration style, which is we're going through the circle, and the only rule, and it's kind of brainstorming mode, but the keep it to one item per share. And then we do multiple rounds to kind of layer it so that you're not mixing different ideas, and it allows people to build on them a little bit more easily. So I'm going to hold to that one of the important things that I am bringing forward is that kind of the importance of a regular rhythm. And I pass over to Justin.
Um, yeah, I'll pass for now to April.
okay. One of the things that's occurring to me about this in that we're trying to create a checklist that will be useful not just for us but for other guilds is that we weren't able to move to what a checklist could be or what the primary things were until we had gone back and kind of reviewed the conditions of how things were set up for that particular vessel that we might call the Connecting the Dots Club, why we were doing it that way. And um, other things for me did not rise to the surface until we had done that. There was just something, the re-exploration of the territory, I guess, um, was really important. And I think that that is a learning that we can pass on, is to expect that that might happen when you're trying to evoke the most important parts, the salient parts, and the parts that define the actual thing that you're trying to do that distinguishes it from other things. So over to Roland.
Um, and the importance of revisiting, um, and I think it's a kind it's implied it in the aim act
Mm,
reflect aim act cycle, uh, and even and that which is a way of keeping the agreements fluid and up to date and relevant. And with people coming and going, that's part of the process of being able to. It's a form of reciprocity to get to receive, as opposed to get to receive, uh, the wisdom of each flowing into the circle. Like, uh, for us, we've been doing it for so long that um, having something about the fair share footprint didn't occur to us to include it in the agreements because it's so foundational. And that, today it seems like a, well, of course we would have something about, acknowledging technology, acknowledging the place that we take on the planet. So that's the value and the importance of revisiting and seeing things as being this cycle that accrues and sheds, I suppose, learning the negative lessons, learning what doesn't work and being able to let go of that to make room for what can come next. So over to Ben.
Yeah, I really like that. Ah, well, and then so that's making me think a little bit about um, a little bit. I think it's just a reaffirmation of the power of circle and creating a space where, and getting the language right is always tricky around stuff like this, but vulnerability is necessary. The that or maybe it's flipping it around. Maybe this is the way of saying it is doing things in a trauma-informed way is and that's part of going slow to go fast, is being intentional about creating the conditions that make it as possible for people to show up as possible. Um, yeah, I think I'm fumbling around a little bit, but I think it's a go slow to go fast, and that really the um, change happens at the speed of trust, and which is really easy to forget. Actually, I think this is also one of those probably even more useful for other guilds because we have the agreement so front and center, and the other guilds are thinking about getting stuff done. And so probably that reminder that the the revisit the it can feel frustrating that we're going back again to the old, we're going back to that. And didn't we already talk about this? That's kind of the modernist approach. Aren't we done with that? Didn't we write that down somewhere? Um, but in the same spirit, taking the time to create the supportive circumstances is worth it. Sorry, it took me a long time to get there. That's my point. Over to you, Justin.
Yeah, I'll just ask for clarifications on the coming and going. Is that specifically for the guild or like for the Lifeboat Academy as a whole?
Yeah, I think as a whole, um, it's part of the reality, I think, of doing this work with these kinds of projects that there's going to be people coming and going. They're all, actually, I would say it's just life, right? Life is people coming and going. So making space for that.
I was actually on a Zoom call this morning with Darshan Narvaez, the creator of the Evolved Nest concept, and she says the Evolved Nest is a community provision, and the way I've been thinking about it is through a small band lens, like just not using the word community because it could be so confusing.
Mhm.
So I was kind of thinking about that, like the Lifeboat Academy being um, kind of like that group, that whole that is the more than the sum of its parts. And Darsha had brought up like in small bands, they were very people would come and go all the time, like just leave a band and go to another band. Um, yeah, so I'm kind of thinking about it that way. I don't know if that relates to anything, but yeah, I'll pass to April.
I really like your observation, Justin. Thank you for that. The other thing that I've come back to here is the reciprocity. And is there a way, if these are learnings that we're going to talk about with other guilds, to always have a question for whatever it is you're doing about how does this, whatever it is we're doing at the moment, reflect reciprocity and make it quite explicit. Because we know that reciprocity is one of the most satisfying things about this whole system, and that not everyone understands what a reciprocal state is. And being able to pull people into that and to encourage that is quite a strong leg for this, I guess. And over to Roland.
You're muted.
This is maybe a bit of a left field comment. I was noticing earlier in what the this guild is that we talk about, um, that we're involved in how the agreements are understood and used in the other guilds. And currently that is because each one of us is on at least one, if not multiple other guilds. Um, but it made me wonder about, well, how am I, is it just by my way of being, or is there something more directed that the members of the Heartwork Guild could do to be able to assist the other guilds to keep the agreements in mind and to use the agreements? So yeah, I'm supposed to say what comes up to my it comes up, so that's what came up. Over to, and it feels like it's related to what was being said before, just maybe in a more specific way. Over to Ben.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense to me, and that is the point, really, is we need to get to that kind of more brass tacks. How, it's all well and good to sort of identify these themes and patterns, etc., but how do you breathe life into them and develop habits around them? So, and what that makes me think of actually is in sociocracy, the the way that it's recommended, um, there in the sort of the master bylaws using the sort of sociocracy template, there is an annual decision audit.
Ah,
And that makes me think of, well, if this is supposed to be how we are working together, and are we creating spaces that make it okay for people to work, that fit how people want to be working together? It's kind of an evaluation question. Do
yeah.
we, what do we have a role? Maybe this is part of the answer to what's the role that we play in the other guilds, is also, do we have some role in asking everyone how their experience is? And, are we creating the conditions where you can be present and show up? So yeah, I think it's in the same spirit of Roland's comment. Over to you, Justin.
Yeah, I'm just processing that for now, but I'll pass to April.
I'm feeling like at this point that we've actually got quite a nice body of stuff here. I want to take this away and think about it. I want to hang it on my wall, just like sometimes I hang the agreements up and just do some pondering on it. Over to Roland.
I think what I'd like to do with with my turn this time around is just to acknowledge what the guild has done so far in terms of encouraging the agreements. So I feel like what we were just talking about was more sort of direct. How can we as members of the guild and also members of other guilds bring the issue of the or uh, more actively work on the agreements with the other guilds. But I think what we did this last cycle was put in some infrastructure, some larger infrastructure to talk about Lifeboat Academy stuff. The Connect the Dots Club, the Agreement Circle, that originated with the Heartwork Guild, and as a member of both the Heartwork Guild and the Outreach Guild, the social media, the memes that I've been making and sharing is also, that sort of Heartwork and philosophy stuff that is being funneled into the Outreach Guild. So those are all things that have to do with the agreements and with how we want to be together and work together and build what comes after. Um, and Yeah, so just to acknowledge that, and that from that we're coming to look more closely at how we're working with all of these things internally. Maybe over to Ben.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I too feel like we're coming to a nice pause in it does feel like we're identifying some of the scaffolding and thinking about, for the next meeting. Oh, actually, that's maybe a question of how do we want to position ourselves for the next meeting to be as useful as possible? Um, we can do the old everyone think about it and then hope that anyone has a chance to do that and then rebuild when we get together. Or I guess the question is also, when do we feel like we might have, what might a document look like? Is there, or what would a product look like as a way of getting us a little bit more focused? When are we ready for that? Um, but I do feel like, yeah, I think this has been I think that the multi-step process feels like it's really effective. I don't know that I really had a point to make there. I think I'm just trying to figure out where we are. Justin, over to you.
I think I'm in the flow now, and forgive me if I'm like adding confusion, but consideration to put in the mix. I'm thinking about. I heard his name this morning again, Gabriel Cram, and he's like a cartographer of the nervous system. I think he calls himself. It's like mapping, where what state you're in, and it just makes me think of like how we're in our little social unit trying to use polyvagal theory, and it's just like, yeah, just thinking about how in guilds you maybe have like a practice of mapping you like what neurobiological state you're at using like a polyvagal lens of like green safe, yellow fight or flight, red shutdown, and then mixed states. But like how, like, I guess through that lens, it's like how are the agreements bringing us to a safe state in our neurobiology. So all our brain capacity can be used, and we feel safe, and we're healing, and we're growing, and we're more open to like a limbic resonance with each other. So there is that emergent, like the sum of the parts of the guild are whatever the gestalt thing is. The whole is more than the sum of its parts, kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know if that's helpful or just adds confusion, but that's where my mind went. I'll pass to April.
Um, I, I- um, yeah, I'm kind of interested by that. We probably want to talk about that more. Um, because we do have some systems now of sort of self-regulation coming into any work. So I think we just let's discuss this more at some point, and I have to go in 2 minutes, is my other message. Over to Roland.
And I think Ben's point is, what does going away and thinking about this look like? Like, what are we hoping to do by doing that? Uh, are we coming back with a proposal? Our take on the discussion so far? Next steps, like what are we doing with this information? Over to Ben.
Yeah, well, and especially given we have an encouragement to wrap up here and to try to draw together the loose ends. Um, I feel like it's I think that I'm going to propose that if we do something like, because I'm hearing a couple things. Roland talking about what are some of the infrastructure we have in place. April, the same thing. What are some of the mechanisms that we already sort of think we have in place that we think help with that sense of safety and creating a good space? Um, and maybe just mapping that, then the question is, are there any gaps? Do we have any questions about, are we fairly certain some of them are like, this is really gold, never skip this. This is optional, use it when, actually sort of breaking it down into, actually, now I'm thinking about the badging system, and are there skills and practices associated with these things? So what I'm thinking is, if we set for ourselves, I'm making a gentle proposal that our next meeting, we start to map out what are the specific tools and the feedback mechanisms that we might be interested in, um, listing what's already existing and then seeing if there are gaps, etc. Justin, over to you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like my previous comment and where it might have come from, but I know you had mentioned, like in the guilds, is there a feeling that the agreements help others show up? Yeah, with how they want to, I think is how it was. But yeah, I don't know. I like the hang it on the wall thing. Just looking at what's been collected, gathered, and thinking about it more, and interested to again like learn so much more about what you're already up to past April.
I think I'm going to pass, and I actually do have to go. So I'm not only passing, but I'm leaving. But I will get in touch to find out what's what very soon. Thank you, you guys. Bye for now.
Bye, April.
Okie dokie. I guess that's back to me. Okay. Does that sounds like a plan then? So the next step, the action item for the next meeting is going over what we have and pulling out the nuggets in a nutshell. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, I think what just kind of clicked into place for me is it's that connection of we think we use the agreements to make it possible for people to show up, to feel present and show up. And so that's what we're testing all of these things against. Does it help people feel present and show up? And that's and I think I really like that idea of the polyvagal lens too, about because it's not necessarily a binary, it's sort of like I feel fully present, I feel a little uncomfortable, I've checked out, it's yeah, that feels good to me.
And with the polyvagal lens, is that sort of also playing with the idea of the growth edge? That little bit of discomfort that helps you grow,
Mm.
or not?
That's a great
Yeah, I
question.
added our polyvagal world to the mural board. And that's just like a good introduction. He like co-wrote it with his son to make it accessible because his stuff is pretty dense. So yeah, there are mixed states. I don't know if that answers the question. I forgot what the question was already.
Growth edge.
Sorry,
Yeah,
what was the question again?
if it understands or plays with the idea of a growth edge, so that it's
Growth.
not just about being comfortable, but rather what's the dynamic that allows for development and growth and
Yeah, I don't think it's specifically in there, but they do talk about like mixed states where you could have like a green yellow, which is like play,
Mhm.
or like a red green, which is like rest, like a kind of shut down and but safe still.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure there's anything particularly about the growth edge of
okay.
like what creativity could come from being uncomfortable, being in a yellow state, maybe.
Well, and this is one of the things that's interesting about bringing all of these ideas together, because you take and not having read, I don't know for sure, but taking the polyvagal theory and combining it with the anti-fragility idea, then that there's sort of like these really interesting conversations that start to happen, I think, anyway.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm totally popcorning, and I think this is the end of the meeting. So,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
we've got what we need, I think, for the next meeting. The next meeting, like these meetings are every other week. I noticed when I was sending out the last minute reminder, that oh, is it for this one or is it for the farm? Anyway, there is the possibility with new people coming on that the time we'll have to talk about changing the time. So, but for the time being, in 2 weeks from now, same day, same time, will be the next guild meeting, and we should be sending out the notes and the link to the YouTube video for. I find it's often interesting to not just read the words, but hear the inflection and the tone. So the videos are often useful for me, etc., etc. Yes, Ben.
I'm just going to offer this as a report, a relevant report from other guilds. Is the plan? There's a little bit of scheduling up in the air, but basically we'll be doing a general onboarding the same way we did the Lifeboat 101. So there'll be a Wednesday early and a Friday afternoon, and that's going to cover basically a lot of the mechanics, like how do we apply sociocracy, what's the coordination circle, how do we use Asana, and also one of the things to talk about because this is a question across the guild, since we have new people with diverse schedules, we want to figure out one way rather than each guild having to figure out its own schedule. Can we gather all of that information in one go and make it easier for, to pick times that work for people? So basically what we think that will turn into is when people show up at the onboarding, we just say, are there any times that are particularly good for you? Are there any times that just don't work for you? And we'll gather that and then have kind of a master list of our timetables. And then it makes it easier to kind of figure out, oh, okay, so the 10 people who are interested in heart work, these are the times that work for everybody. So just to let you know, that's on the horizon. And it should happen, we're hoping next week. No, sorry, 2 weeks. It'll happen a week from, because we're almost at the end of this week. That's all.
All right. So a final round for any last comments, questions, impressions as our checkout round. Over to you, and I'll start for a change instead of just passing it on. Thank you all. I have some hangups around facilitating circles, and so it's always a bit of a struggle for me, and you have been very lovely to me, so thank you very much. Over to Ben.
Yeah, I think I'm getting more and more comfortable with an appropriate level of messiness. And this seems appropriately messy. It feels like in the good, juicy, productive, messy part. Over to you, Justin.
Yeah, as a person that also has trouble facilitating, that was amazing. That was great. Thank you. Yeah, I did have a question about the schedule. Is it on like an Asana note, like because you said the schedule is kind of like fairly regular for the meetings. Just wondering like where I could get access to that.
There are a couple places. We keep a Google Calendar that has all the meetings on it. So you can if you use Google Calendar, you can get it there. We publish the events every 2 weeks in the newsletter, and that goes on our website. So if you go onto the website and look at events, it should have the most recent email newsletter that'll have the schedule for all of the meetings that are coming up.
Okay.
And
then we also send reminders for each of the guilds. So usually the day before we send just a little email with the link and the agenda.
And if you'd like, I can check and add your email address to the Google Calendar invitation thing, and then then it'll just, if you use Google Calendars, it'll populate the calendar for every 2 weeks.
Okay, yeah, that might be useful.
Cool. Okay. So I'll just get your email from Ben, I guess, or I'll look. I can look
It's
in
in the Lifeboat email.
right. Okay.
So
I can do that.
I think, yeah, I think you guys have my Outlook email, my Gmail. I don't use very often, but I should start using it more. Might be easier.
okay,
Um,
check. Actually, let's. I think I'm going to pause the recording now because I think we're done with that.